In the previous videos, we show some examples of the rubrics which are not properly constructed. It was mentioned that there are some criteria which seems to be unnecessary and insignificant. This can eventually become the redundant to the assessment later, and this redundant may eventually affect the assessment outcome, which take up the focus, fading out something that was supposed to be more important. If possible, we will need to identify the significant criteria, focus the assessment onto those criteria. It was also mentioned that we can use the rubrics as a mechanism to facilitate learning of the students. Students are educated to read through the rubrics, and when you have all these criteria spelled out, these are the areas that students need to pay attention. You should make good use of these rubrics to help them improve their qualities of their words. With that, those seems to be insignificant, redundant, not necessary, shall be removed. Another common mistake that we discussed in our previous videos is about the descriptions given in the performance criteria. It needs to be specific and explicit. The description should be clear for the assessor and the students to differentiate different levels of performance. Focus on the characteristics that can be observed as the indications of different levels of performance. Another mistake that we mentioned is that when we want to describe the performance criteria of certain criteria, it shouldn't be only one-dimensional. When it is only one-dimensional, this leads to biased understanding of the requirements of those criteria, and as a result, the rating outcome will also be biased. Therefore, you will need to construct the descriptions for the performance criteria carefully, making sure that the relevant definitions truly reflect the criteria that you want to assess. We mentioned about we need to identify the subcomponents of the respective criteria and start to work about how do you differentiate the different levels of performance. Now in these videos, I'm going to show you how do you construct the performance criteria, describing the criteria that you would like to assess. Taking this as an example, we want to deal with the communications. Now you will have to first ask yourself what constitutes the communications. Now in my personal opinion, the communication should constitute two main components. First, the ability of the students to speak. Second, the information and the message should be delivered to the audience. Taking these two as the basis, then you can think about the subcomponents of those components. What are the good characteristics that can be classified under the ability to speak? And what are the characteristics that you can classify under the delivery? And then you're going to work out the mapping. The mapping here should be unique for different levels of performance. There shouldn't be any replications, and the differentiation should be quite explicit. After you've done this, then you convert this into statements. Now let us look into it one by one. If you are looking into the ability to speak, you will have to think about the characteristic of really good speaker. The person needs to be confident. There are clarity, fluency, and consistency throughout. After that, you will have to find some mechanisms to differentiate them. Let's say now 0 here represent inability to speak well, and the rest it would be bare minimum. Now starting from score 1 to score 4 here, this at least the student should be able to speak. As for this, lacking confidence, but starting from the middle range onward, there must be certain levels of confidence. Same goes to the clarity and probably fluency, and then next come to the consistency. In this case, when the students demonstrate a good consistency, that means that it is something spontaneous to the students, which supposedly to be quite excellent in terms of the performance. And then you're going to convert all these informations into the statements. Not only that, since that we are talking about the communication skills, there is one more item that you would like to look into. Having the ability to speak may not guarantee the effectiveness of the delivery. You will need this part to fill in the thoroughness in terms of the assessment for the criteria. Since we need the message or information to be delivered, not being able to deliver is considered not acceptable. So delivery will be considered starting level 2. And then we'll talk about the relevancy. Let's say we set it starting from level 3. And essential ability to identify the significant points and having the ability to present it in the very effective manners. This will be considered as the most excellent presenter. Now when you compile all this, you can express them in the statements, and then you may check the levels one by one in order to see if there is any replications in terms of the quantities. For example, number 2 and number 3 seems to be quite close. The main difference between number 2 and number 3, it will be the relevancy in terms of the deliveries. Number 4 here, the most excellent performance will have all the good characteristics. As for 1 and 2 here, lacking confidence, clarity, fluency, consistency, and so on so forth. Having the ability to speak but might not be able to deliver the message or informations effectively. Now you are ready to convert all this into the text. Level 0 seems to be really poor. This one is easy to construct. For example, speaks or attempted to speak but message not delivered. No argument on this. Slightly better is level 1. Speaks in the attempt to deliver the information. However, lacking clarity, confidence, and fluency. This is in line to the tick here. Only speaking part is fulfilled. Next level. Speak with an acceptable level of clarity, confidence levels, and fluency in the attempt to deliver information. Now this part here covers the speaking part, and bare minimum can deliver the message. Probably not in the well-versed manner, but at least the message can be delivered. Next come to level 3. Speaks with an acceptable levels of clarities, confidence level, and fluency. Relevant information has been disclosed. Now we have additional criteria here. The informations disclosed are relevant. And then the highest criteria here, speaks very clearly, confidently, and fluently throughout the presentations. This is about the consistency. relevant and essential information has been effectively delivered with adequate emphasis. So now the delivery here is the perfect. Now that we have demonstrated how do you construct the performance criteria for the assessment rubrics. If you compare this with this and probably this, you will see the differences. And this is only meant for one criteria. Let's say now you have several criteria here. You will have to go through the process here to reconstruct everything. Find a mechanism to objectively differentiate different levels and then convert them into the statements and definitions.